Okay, welcome everybody to what is, I hope, the first of many episodes of a show we like to call Football in Focus. My co-host on the show throughout the season, hopefully throughout the year, is my good friend and one of my first drafted clients, Kevin O'Connell. Kevin played for San Diego State, quarterback, was drafted in 2008 by the New England Patriots in the third round, spent the majority of his 5-year career with the Patriots and the Jets. And remains a close friend today. And we do a number of ventures together, and this is something that we've talked for a long time about trying to put together. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Ryan. Thank you for those kind words, and I'm very excited about the possibilities of where we can take this show and hopefully get a lot of listeners and viewers on board, because I think we can bring a lot to the table, not only on the field, but the world of the NFL and really sports in general off the field, which sounds pretty exciting to me.
Yeah, when Google approached us to do this endeavor to kind of use their medium of Google Hangout, I was pretty excited. Kevin, we don't get to spend a ton of time together during the football season. I'm busy recruiting, handling the affairs of my existing clients. You're busy coaching, broadcasting, doing a number of different things sort of peripherally to the sport. And so this is hopefully going to be an opportunity for us to engage with one another, talk about the weekend that was, talk about the Monday night game ahead of us, talk about some of our clients and some of the guys that you're helping sort of through their careers.
Absolutely. And I think the relationships of your current clients that I've been able to develop, you recruit a certain type of athlete, you recruit a certain type of person that I think adding any one of those guys to our Google Hangouts will be particularly valuable to not only fans of the teams they're with, but maybe fans that aren't aware of not only the type of players they are, but the type of people they are as well. And also, I'm looking forward to trying to eventually interact with fans, joining us and with questions and comments they may have that could direct obviously our direction moving forward, not only as a show, but hopefully, just like I said, getting fans involved as possible, because that's what this is for, getting people a view of not only into our lives and our careers, the careers of your clients, but also allowing them to feel like they're involved as well.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to do, and we're sort of still tinkering with the mechanics, but what I think we're going to do is we're going to create, obviously have a Twitter handle, as do I, 360 Sports has one. What we'll probably do is ask the fans of the show and fans of football in general to hashtag any questions, comments, concerns that they might have, Football in Focus, in an overall effort to engage with the people out there that care as much about the sport as we do. One of the unique things about the Google Hangout platform is it's going to provide a unique, easily accessible format for our existing clients, your contacts, coaching contacts throughout the league, to sit in the comfort of their office in New England or in Baltimore or in Cleveland, and just sort of fire it up and have a dialogue over there, and allow us to connect with some of the guys that we've worked with throughout the season when I can't make it to every single one of their games. So I'm really excited about the platform, I'm really excited about the opportunity, and it's going to be a fun opportunity to hang out with you 45 minutes or so once a week that we're not on the golf course together.
No question, and we would never want to expose you too soon, but my golf game, the always improving golf game that it is rapidly approaching being able to challenge you on a week in and week out basis. So you better not spend too much time here on the Google Hangout, because I will sneak out to the driving range and my game will catch up with you. So keep an eye out there, Downey.
Yeah, I don't see that happening at all, even though you're pretty proud of your new little trophy that you've held up.
This trophy, actually. I don't know, folks. We have plenty of time to get into all of my accolades and awards, but this is something, as you can see, I carry it around with me everywhere I go. So
you guys couldn't
third
see
place in the golf tournament is pretty impressive. Yeah, exactly.
You guys couldn't see the little placard there, but it actually said third place shortest drive competition for fifth graders. So it's pretty impressive. I'm glad you still have that with you, Kevin. That's great.
Well, I think it's important to tell everybody already, we support the everybody gets a trophy rule with U Sports today. We don't want to start off on a bad foot. I mean, participation is as valuable as winning sometimes. I don't really believe that, but we'll at least start out on a good foot.
Well, it's interesting. What I think we'll usually do is we usually have a guest on, talk about their game, talk about their upcoming sort of season and things like that. Because this is our first episode, we don't necessarily have a guest on with us. What I wanted to do, Kevin, I wanted to kind of lean on your experience and your expertise. For many of us that are just rabid football fans, we watched the hour-and-a-half Elite 11 special yesterday night that was telecast by ESPN. You were one of the highlighted coaches up there in Portland at the Nike facility. And I wondered if you could kind of give us an idea of the future of the quarterbacking position, which is arguably the most important in professional sports, from the perspective you had a couple of weeks ago. Let me preface that for a second. So much has been talked about kind of the new wave of the NFL, whether it's a spread or read option, quarterbacks not being asked to do as much stuff in high school or college, and then having to read a defense, calling kind of cues and things like that at the line. Where is the position going? What was your experience like this last couple of weeks?
Well, first of all, I mean, the experience to get involved with the Elite 11, Trent Dilfer, some of the folks associated with student sports and up at the Nike campus, was really something that I looked forward to for a long time as far as getting involved with the best of the best at the high school level. I think sometimes we get very caught up in college and the awards and who's going to win this and who's going to be drafted and who's going to make all the money when they get to the NFL, and you get to see the best 18 quarterbacks in the country come together on the same field, some very strong personalities that they all think they're the best. So to be around those guys and get to develop them, even for the short time, the 4 or 5 days we were up in Oregon, was really special. But I think the point that you bring up, Ryan, is a big focus in football right now, all the way from the general managers that you deal with on a daily basis to the scouts that are going around with the job of trying to find the next Andrew Luck and to find the next whoever it may be, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, because guys come in all shapes and sizes. We saw the Super Bowl champion Seahawks. They were quarterbacked by a guy that was a third-round pick. Many thought was too small, didn't have the skill set to be a Peyton Manning, and he just went out and beat Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl and did it with a really good team around him, did it with a great coaching staff and a plan that put him in a position to use that skill set, which is what? It's having the athletic ability to get out on the perimeter. It's having a run game tied to the passing game so that the quarterback can consistently get you into good plays and out of bad plays, and that requires the ability to think. And so I think where you're starting to see the NFL go is every snap is not going to be wasted. There used to be the old adage that plays in the NFL were call it and run it plays. As long as you could spit it out in the huddle, that and all 11 guys went up to the line of scrimmage and did their jobs, things could go very well. But with the growth of defenses and the schemes out there now, there's potential for catastrophe on every play. So what you're seeing is a guy like Phillip Rivers or Aaron Rodgers, they're going to the line with 2 or 3 plays, either called in the huddle or sometimes, as we've seen at the college level, teams aren't even choosing to huddle anymore. Just get to the line, a la Chip Kelly, go really, really fast, put a ton of stress on the defense, but you still need a trigger man to get you in and out of the bad plays and back into the good plays that you're seeing people be so successful with. So I think it's a developed skill set with a little bit more of an added athleticism when warranted, but I don't think the pocket passer is going anywhere because of where the offenses are going as well.
Well, it's an interesting issue that you bring up Chip Kelly, because one of his hallmarks at Oregon was using that card system. And Marcus Mariota last year and this year, he's not being asked to do on the field on a play-to-play basis as much as maybe a traditional power or a traditional NFL pro-style offense is asked to do. And it's a really personal question for me because Nat Scott's one of my clients. And Nat Scott played at Centennial High School in the Inland Empire, was not asked to call a play in the huddle for 4 years. Basically, everything was called from the sideline. He didn't have to do a lot of reading of defenses. It was basically a quick-hitting offense, much like Oregon, to bring up your point, has asked their guys to do in the past couple of years. Now was practice squatted last year by the Jacksonville Jaguars, was waived and claimed by the Cincinnati Bengals. And week 1 of the preseason, he was fantastic. I mean, he was the same old quarterback from Arizona and from high school. The swagger was back. It was a lot of 2-minute type offense trying to lead that team back from what was going to be a blowout loss. They ended up losing by, I think, 2 points. He struggled this past week. Taking second-team reps after Andy Dalton left the game, primarily because he just was not asked to do any of this next-level type of quarterbacking in Arizona or in high school. And I guess my question is, are we as a football kind of community doing enough with the young players of today, as you witnessed in Oregon, to prepare them for that? Or are we setting guys up for failure with these kind of new quick-hitting, read option type of systems?
Well, I think it's great you bring that point up, because I did get a chance to watch Matt Scott play in that first preseason game, and I was so excited, having been around him in the past, to see him perform on the field. And I think in the second half of preseason games, I have a lot of experience, obviously, as a former player. Those were the times that you create some excitement to give yourself a chance to move up the depth chart. But what happens when you move up the depth chart, Ryan, is you end up having a situation where the entire playbook is in play. And more so than that, the other guys that are lining up across the line from you, the 11 guys playing defense, are 5- and 6-year veterans if you're playing with the twos, or they're first and second round draft picks if you're playing with the twos. And then you move up on to the first string guys that are getting 75 to 80% of the reps. You're running into play after play where there no longer is a wide open guy because of human error. There no longer is, a defensive back lining up on the complete wrong side just because he doesn't have the experience to know where to line up versus certain formations. So what happens is it requires you to operate with not only the skill set that it takes to play the NFL position all across the board, but it requires you to play with timing and rhythm. And the second you're outside of that timing, you could make a perfect throw, but the skill level of the guys you're playing against and that you're throwing to, or that are blocking for you, or blocking the pass rushers that are coming after you, the margin of error is so small that a lot of young guys making that next step up on the depth chart just cannot adjust right away. And I think that was 1 week later for Matt. He obviously deserved the opportunity to get out there with the twos, and I'm sure he did some really good things that the coaches saw on tape. But as far as for all of us watching at home, those kind of flashy plays and scrambles and some of the throws, the touchdown throw and the slant pass he had against the Chiefs, those are all still in his skill set, but it's about everybody else now. It's about elevating his play to that of an NFL starting caliber quarterback, and that's what really separates guys as you move through the depth chart, either up or down. And I think there's cases around the entire NFL where you can week in and week out see the circumstances change for them, and guys have a little bit of problem with that.
Let me ask you this. There's been a lot of talk this preseason. You worked with one of these young men before the draft in Johnny Manziel, but there's been a lot of talk about a couple of, let's say 3, quarterback competitions that are purportedly open, whether we're talking about Blake Bortles in Jacksonville, whether we're talking about Teddy Bridgewater in Minnesota, or your guy Johnny Manziel in Cleveland. Now, you spent, I think it was last week, in Cleveland's camp, serving as one of their coaches. Head coach out there, Mike Pettin, had you out for the week. You got to see sort of that competition unfold. My question is this: is it better for a guy in this maturation process where a franchise has invested so much time, energy, and money on a guy, is it better for them to learn trial by fire on the field or holding a clipboard? Because the stuff that you're talking about in terms of Matt, you can't learn that kind of stuff just sitting there necessarily. Is it better to be thrown to the wolves, thrown to the fire early, to take your lumps and actually grow that way, or is the alternative a better approach?
That is in the new CBA, that is the $25 million question for a lot of these guys. And I think that's where the draft process becomes so important, because if you're a franchise, let's just take the 3 examples we're talking about. So the Cleveland Browns, starting with Johnny Manziel and Brian Hoyer. Brian Hoyer is a guy that has the experience operating one of the best offenses we've ever seen in New England with the New England Patriots, learning from a guy like Tom Brady. He comes to Cleveland, was 4-0 last year as a starter for the Cleveland Browns that did not have a winning record. Yeah. So he obviously was doing something on the field to be successful. What was he doing? He was playing between the ears, and he's not overly impressive physically. He doesn't run that well. He doesn't have that Johnny football ability. But what Brian Hoyer does is he consistently plays with great rhythm, plays with great timing. He's extremely accurate and allows the playmakers on the field to be the exciting playmakers, allows the offensive line with Joe Thomas at left tackle and Alex Mack at center, that they pay a lot of money He allows them to operate at a high level, and he does his job. And that's a big mantra around the NFL right now, and it really always has been, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. Whatever your skill set is, whatever bonuses you can add in college, that becomes huge, because the 5 or 6, 7 plays a game where you're kind of off calendar, or is what Trent Dilfer calls it, whether you're scrambling or using your athletic ability to create offense, that really doesn't exist in the NFL, because the 300-pound guys on the defensive line are just as fast as you are. The corners and safeties know just as much football as you do. So to think you're going to out kind of Johnny football people, and this is Johnny's big thing right now, is he's got to learn to play within the confines of the offense and do his job. Because those 2 or 3 plays where he's Johnny football and the fans get excited and they get a first down don't overcome the 5 to 7 other third downs in the game where they go 3 and out because he misses his hot read or he does not go through his progression. Because in the NFL, there's normally one guy open on a passing play, as opposed to in college when you're running certain offenses, that A&M offense or that Oregon offense that you know really well from all your clients, Ryan. There's a lot of guys open, and it's just about playing pitch and catch. But in the NFL, there's one guy open, and it might end up being your 4th progression or your 5th progression. The best possible scenario might end up being taking a sack, if you can imagine that, against some of these defenses that you play week in and week out. It's not always going to be Johnny football time. Sometimes it's take your medicine, move on to the next play, and find a way to move those chains so when you get down to the red zone and you score points that way, the excitement can come out. But until he learns that, I can totally understand in Cleveland why a guy like Mike Pettin would want to go with the safer choice, where he knows he's going to get more consistent play, maybe not as exciting, but he's going to get consistent. Blake Bortles has done some great things down in Jacksonville. They've got a guy in Chad Henne. Exact same situation. I don't think Blake Bortles necessarily is as exciting as Johnny Manziel, but Blake Bortles is a 3rd pick in the draft for a reason. Crazy skill set, will develop over time. And then you look at Teddy Bridgewater in Minnesota, Matt Castle, extremely steady, a former teammate of mine, a guy that the team respects, a guy that the team thinks that they can go win games with, or better yet, they want to win games with Matt Castle because he's kind of thought of so highly in that offense and in that locker room. Mike Zimmer knows that. And so to put Teddy Bridgewater out there when they really haven't seen him face the live bullets of an NFL defense on the road with 70,000 people going crazy, I can totally understand why you don't want to make people learn trial by fire out on the field, especially when head coaches are getting fired these days after 1 year in Cleveland's case last year. So there's a lot of circumstances that kind of all intertwine to form the crazy game that is the NFL right now, and that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about week in and week out here, because obviously on the management side and dealing with GMs, you have a ton of experience as a certified NFL agent, former agent of mine. We'll talk about that later. I think I still owe you some money. But on the playing side, for me, and now on the broadcasting side as well, there's so much that comes together that really makes it so special, more so than just fantasy football and just who's going to make the playoffs and win the Super Bowl. There's a lot more that goes into it Monday through Saturday leading up to those games every week.
Yeah, it's funny. We're talking about the preseason, and I know the pundits that like to talk about football are just sort of thirsty for anything that is football. It's why the NFL was so adamant about taking the draft from April to May, because they wanted a marquee event in May. The NFL is not stupid. They're a marketing machine for a reason. They know how to push buttons. The preseason, it's a hot button topic for a lot of fans and a lot of athletes, a lot of players. 4 games. 4 games seems like a lot to sort of the common fan that has to pay the same ticket prices, has to pay the same $12 for a beer, $5 for a hot dog, whatever it happens to be. Why is the preseason important? And it's a loaded question, certainly, but I sort of have my perspective on that from sort of a younger guy breaking in, getting reps. We talked about kind of the trial by fire with some of those young quarterbacks. They get some of those reps in the preseason, but why should we care? Why should the common fan care about the preseason?
Well, there's a lot of things you can look at when you look at preseason, and granted, they've done some things to change the rules. There's obviously still 4 games that the fans do pay a lot of money for, and there's no changing that. that opportunity and the TV revenue. There's a lot of little things that we don't really have time to get into that frustrate the players and I think frustrate the NFLPA about the preseason because there's some dollars and cents that don't always add up there. But that's a conversation for a different day. Let's talk about it from the fans' perspective. And I completely understand in San Diego, for example, when you go to the game, you pay $85 for your normal season ticket. You pay $20 to park. You pay $40 for food that night. I understand why you're frustrated when Phillip Rivers comes out of the game after 4 snaps. I get that. But I also understand that Tom Brady played in the third and fourth quarter of preseason games. Wes Welker was a fourth quarter preseason stalwart. And if you're a fan of football, you should not just be a fan of the top 5 or 6 guys on the roster. It's okay to wear your Phillip Rivers, your Tom Brady jersey to the game, but that does not mean that you don't need to support the backup quarterback who doesn't always just need to be important to you when the starter goes down and it's in the middle of a playoff run. And I'll kind of argue the point of what somebody in an organization told me one time when I said I can't believe when I was buying tickets, maybe for my agent or my family to go see me play in New York or on a Philadelphia for a road preseason game, I complained about the ticket prices. And the management said something very smart to me. He said, yeah, you're complaining now, but you're going to be pretty excited when that playoff ticket for the AFC Championship game is the same price. So it works both ways. If your team is going to charge the same amount for the regular season, they've been pretty good about not raising those ticket prices, at least if you're a fan, a paying customer each and every week. Now, if you try to buy them on StubHub or on the, whatever the scalper ticket market, you're going to pay a lot more. And I think whether you go to the games or not, there's a lot of things that you can do with those preseason tickets. There is somebody out there, it might be somebody in junior high or a younger kid in high school that's never been to a game, can't afford to go. Find a way to get him the ticket. Find a way to expose him to the greatest game in the world, just like we were all exposed to or were lucky enough to be exposed to when we were younger. There's a lot of different ways to handle the preseason. If you're not a fan of football, you're a fan of fantasy football, I can understand why it makes you frustrated sometimes, but do some scouting. Get your fantasy draft together. Watch out for that next big player that's going to come out. But I think people that argue against the importance of the preseason, I think it's people that are just extremely short-sighted and they're not looking at it from the big picture process.
Now, it's funny, you mentioned fantasy football. I feel I'd be remiss if I didn't mention your phone call to me about an hour ago where you've asked me to attend and draft your fantasy football team because you're going to be on the radio tomorrow evening. You want to share with anybody out there some of the things you've seen from the first couple of weeks that sort of stick out to you as you got to go get this guy? He's a younger player. We didn't see a ton of him last year. He's the guy that's going to be a fantasy, I don't like the term sleeper, but you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, I think around the league right now, there's some really impressive guys, especially skill position-wise on the offensive side, rookies that are in some really, really good situations. Obviously, it won't come as a surprise. Brandon Cooks in New Orleans. I mean, a receiver out of Oregon State, put up tremendous numbers last year. He was a first-round pick to the New Orleans Saints. And if you are one of those fans of fantasy football, you know who the trigger man is in New Orleans. It's a guy that's thrown for 5,000 yards the past 3 seasons, I believe, and he's basically put him on the board for another 5,035 touchdowns. And now you give him another weapon to go along with Marquise Colston and Jimmy Graham and the rest of the crew that they have there. I mean, that New Orleans offense arguably should be talked about with the Broncos as the best offense in football right now. So I think that'll be really fun to watch, obviously, a guy like that. I mean, Mike Evans down in Tampa playing on the opposite side of Vincent Jackson. Josh McCown goes down there and proved last year you give him 2 Pro Bowl caliber 6'5" wide receivers like he had in Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. I think he went 9-1 as a starter, and there was some genuine conflict when Jay Cutler came back. He's now their quarterback. They've got, like I said, the 2 receivers. They've got their running back coming back from injury, and they've got Lovie Smith. So you know they're going to play good defense. Tampa's obviously picking and choosing maybe in the later rounds. Defense, special teams, those things could be something to keep an eye on. But when you're talking fantasy football, I think the number one position always is running back, and a position that everybody else outside the fantasy football world is really taking shots at, and there's really not that $10 million a year guy. The contracts are starting to go more along the lines of $3 to $4 million, and you're going to be part of a stable of running backs. So unless you can get Jamal Charles, Adrian Peterson, Arian Foster, and unless you can get these guys, you've got to kind of piecemeal together a roster of a Danny Woodhead, of a Reggie Bush in Detroit, guys that are going to catch the football, guys that are going to be on the field on third down and in the red zone where they could potentially kind of steal a touchdown here or there. All that being said, I'm absolutely terrible at fantasy football, and that's something we'll work in throughout the season, I'm sure, here, focusing with the Focus in Football 360 Sports. So maybe I can hire you. You'd be my personnel director of my fantasy football team.
Perfect. Well, you're well on your way. Now, just to kind of wrap things up, Kev, I really appreciate your time. I know with your broadcasting for CBS, you were with ESPN last year. The coaching that you're doing, be it for the Browns or whether it's for private players as they get ready for the draft, combine type of season, you're super busy. I'm crazy busy this time of year. I think it's going to be a great opportunity once a week at 2 o'clock on Mondays to kind of connect and sort of check in with where we are, where some of our contacts are, where some of our players are, and kind of just unpack, for lack of a better term, where guys are, where they're going, and sort of the state of football in general. I think we're going to be able to use this Google Hangout platform to show some All-22 video, to break down some plays that were pivotal to Sunday's games leading up to Monday night. And I'm excited to share this kind of adventure with you. I think it's going to be great.
I think it's going to be fantastic. And you and I would be having these conversations anyway. And I learned in my limited time so far in television, sometimes the best material happens off the set, in the green room, when you're just talking to a former coach or a former player that you're going to share time with on the set. And then you get out there and you forget half the great stuff you said. So this format gives us the chance to take that conversation, bring it to fans out there who want to get involved, have a lot of your clients on. You've got a phenomenal client list of guys that fans will see each and every Sunday all over the landscape of the NFL. And then as we get into draft season, I know you're obviously going to be approaching a lot of the top college athletes. I cover college football for CBS, like you said, so it should be pretty exciting as far as getting to know maybe some of those guys a little bit better, but letting some of the fans know long before what sounds like is going to be another May NFL draft. It's going to let the fans get an inside peek at what these guys are all about long ahead of time. It's going to be great, Ryan. I can't thank you enough for inviting me to join you, being a part of this, and I'm just really excited about it.
No, I think it'll be fun. Thanks to Google for sort of setting us up with this and allowing us that platform and kind of just taking the show and running with it. And I, too, kind of echo those sentiments. I really hope that this does have that green room type of feel where we have our clients on from the living rooms of their homes where they're just kind of eating a bag of Doritos if they're an offensive lineman, or eating like a chicken if they're Griff Whalen, just to try to get a feel for what their lives are like and sort of give people a little bit of a glimpse into kind of the behind the curtain, as it were. But anyway, I appreciate it. That's it for our first episode of Football in Focus. Join us next week at 2 o'clock on Monday. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ryan.